Here are the top 25 Stephen King movies, based on novels, novellas, and short stories from the American author known for horror, suspense, sci-fi, and fantasy. Number 25, Firestarter. Years after participating in secret medical experiments, a couple's young daughter begins to exhibit the ability of setting fires with her mind, starring Drew Barrymore. Based on the 1980 novel, there's also a 2002 made-for-TV sequel and a 2022 remake starring Zac Efron. Number 24, The Boogeyman. A teenage girl and her sister are plagued by a sadistic presence in their house and struggle to get their grieving father to pay attention. Based on the 1977 short story. The Boogeyman was originally meant to be released straight to streaming on Hulu, but strong reception from test screenings prompted a wide theatrical release. Number 23, Hearts in Atlantis. A widowed mother and her son's lives are forever changed when a mysterious stranger enlists the aid of the brilliant boy to save his life, starring Anthony Hopkins. Based on the 1999 novella, the movie is adapted primarily from Low Men in Yellow Coats, the first story from the Hearts in Atlantis story collection. Number 22, Children of the Corn. A young couple gets trapped in a remote town where a boy preacher has convinced all the children to murder every adult, starring Linda Hamilton. Based on the 1977 short story, Children of the Corn has spawned several sequels and imitations, none of which are acknowledged by Stephen King on his official website. Link in the description. Number 21, Cat's Eye. 3 stories linked by a stray cat. A man tries to quit smoking, an adulterer is forced on a building ledge, and an evil gnome threatens a child, starring Drew Barrymore and James Woods. The first 2 stories, Quitters Inc. and The Ledge, are adaptations of the 1978 short stories from Night Shift, and the third, General, is unique to the film. Number 20, Pet Cemetery. After tragedy strikes, a grieving father discovers an ancient burial ground near the old pet cemetery with the power to raise the dead. Based on the 1983 novel, Stephen King has said that Pet Sematary was the only novel he wrote that really scared him. There's a 1992 sequel starring Edward Furlong and a 2019 remake starring Jason Clarke. Number 19, Cujo. A mother and her son get caught in the crosshairs when a once friendly dog contracts rabies and conducts a reign of terror on a small town. Based on the 1981 novel. On Stephen King's official website, Cujo is listed as a character in numerous other novels, including Needful Things, The Body, The Dark Half, and Pet Sematary. Number 18, The Running Man. A falsely convicted policeman gets his shot at freedom when forced to participate in a game show where runners battle killers for freedom, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. Based on the Richard Bachman novel from 1982. Bachman is a pseudonym or pen name used by Stephen King on 8 novels from the 1970s and 80s, used to get around an unofficial rule that claimed genre authors could release no more than 1 book per year. Number 17, Secret Window. In the midst of a painful divorce, a writer is stalked at his remote lake house by a would-be author who accuses him of plagiarism, starring Johnny Depp. Based on the 1990 novella Secret Window, Secret Garden. This was inspired by a previous novel, and King used familiar plot elements from The Dark Half, but approached them in a new way. The Dark Half comes in at number 30 on the list. And another honorable mention, Salem's Lot from 1979. A vampire movie with decent ratings on some websites, but it's missing from others. It doesn't appear in any of the ranked lists I found on the internet because it's considered a television miniseries rather than a movie. There's a 1987 sequel, a 2004 made-for-TV remake starring Rob Lowe, a 2021 prequel TV series starring Adrian Brody, and a 2023 remake expected sometime later this year. Number 16, It Chapter 2. 27 years after their first encounter with a terrifying monster, a devastating phone call brings the group back together. Based on the 1986 novel. It Chapters 1 and 2 have a combined running total of 5 hours and 4 minutes. That's 2 hours longer than the original 1990 miniseries. This was Stephen King's second highest grossing movie at the box office. Number 15, Dolores Claiborne. A reporter travels to a small town where her mother is accused of murder of an elderly woman for whom she worked as a housekeeper, based on the 1993 novel starring Kathy Bates and Jennifer Jason Leigh. This is the second time Kathy Bates starred in a Stephen King movie. King was impressed after meeting her on the set of Misery and actually wrote the character of Dolores Claiborne with her in mind. Number 14, Christine. A nerd's newfound confidence turns to arrogance when he becomes obsessed with restoring a classic car with an evil mind of its own. Based on the 1983 novel about a love triangle involving a 17-year-old misfit, his new girlfriend, and a haunted 1958 Plymouth Fury. Stephen King was so popular at the time that the film went into production before the book was even published. Number 13, Gerald's Game. When her husband dies unexpectedly, a woman faces warped visions and dark secrets while handcuffed to a bed in a remote lake house. Based on the 1992 novel. This was a direct-to-streaming Netflix original production, the first of the Stephen King Netflix adaptations, including 1922, In the Tall Grass, and Mr. Harrigan's Phone. Number 12, 1408. A man who specializes in debunking paranormal occurrences checks into a haunted hotel room where he confronts genuine terror, based on the 2002 short story. Starring John Cusack and Samuel L. Jackson, who also appeared together in another Stephen King movie, Cell, from 2016. Number 11, Creepshow. 5 tales of terror about a murdered father, a bizarre meteor, a vengeful husband, a mysterious crate, and a plague of cockroaches. Starring Hal Holbrook and Leslie Nielsen. Inspired by EC Comics of the 1950s, Stephen King wrote the original screenplay, George A. Romero directed it. The sequel was released in 1987, written by King and Romero, but directed by someone else. Number 10, Dr. Sleep. Traumatized by sinister events that occurred in his childhood, a man must protect a girl with similar powers from a cult who prey on children. Starring Ewan McGregor and Rebecca Ferguson. Based on the 2013 novel. Dr. Sleep continues the story of Danny Torrance, 40 years after his terrifying stay at the Overlook Hotel in The Shining. Audiences of The Shining are generally split between fans of the book and fans of the film. This sequel attempts to satisfy both sets of fans. Number 9, The Mist. A group of people are trapped in a grocery store when a dense cloud of mist envelops their small town and threatens their lives. Starring Thomas Jane. Based on the 1980 novella, director Frank Darabont was also the creator of the television series The Walking Dead, and a few recognizable actors from the movie played key roles in the Walking Dead series. The Mist was later made into a 10-episode television series of its own. Number 8, It. A group of bullied kids band together to destroy a shape-shifting monster, which disguises itself as a clown and preys on children. Starring Bill Skarsgård. Based on the 1986 novel. It Chapter 1 is Stephen King's highest-grossing movie at the box office, followed by Chapter 2. Combined, the two films made $1.2 billion. To date, Stephen King movies have brought in close to $3 billion worldwide in box office sales. Number 7, The Dead Zone. A man awakens from a coma to discover he has the ability to see the past, present, and future of anyone he comes in contact with. Based on the 1979 novel, starring Christopher Walken. The Dead Zone was the first of several Stephen King novels and short stories that take place in the fictional small town of Castle Rock, including Cujo, Stand By Me, The Dark Calf, and Needful Things. Number 6, The Green Mile. A prison guard tries to stop a condemned man's execution after recognizing the man possesses mysterious healing powers. Starring Tom Hanks and Michael Clark Duncan. Originally released as a serialized novel in 1996, Stephen King serialized The Green Mile as a deliberate response to fans who flipped to the end of his books. Publishing it in installments meant that fans would have to wait for the last installment to find out the ending. This is the second highest rated on IMDb, Tomato Audiences, TMDb, and Just Watch. Number 5, Misery. A novelist is rescued from a car crash by an obsessed fan who keeps him in a remote cabin in a nightmare of captivity and abuse. Based on the 1987 novel, starring James Caan and Kathy Bates. Stephen King was reluctant to sell the rights to Misery because he was skeptical that Hollywood would make it faithful to his vision. However, King was impressed with the adaptation of Stand By Me and agreed to sell Misery as long as Rob Reiner directed it. Number 4, Stand By Me. 4 boys go on a journey to find the body of a missing boy, and their adventure evolves into a defining event in their lives. Based on the 1982 novella, The Body, starring Will Wheaton and River Phoenix. After director Rob Reiner screened the movie for Stephen King, he noticed that King was visibly shaking and wasn't speaking. He later told Reiner that the movie was the best adaptation of his work that he had ever seen. Second highest rated on Rotten Tomatoes by critics and audiences. Number 3, Carrie. A teenage girl uses supernatural powers to exact revenge on classmates and her fanatical mother that tormented her. Starring Sissy Spacek. Based on the 1974 novel. Carrie was the first Stephen King novel to be published and the first to be adapted into a movie. There's a 1999 sequel, a 2002 made-for-TV movie, and a 2013 remake that comes in at number 27 on my list. This is the highest rated on Metacritic and Rotten Tomatoes. Number 2, The Shining. A family stays at an isolated hotel for the winter, where a sinister presence influences violence and horrific psychic visions. Starring Jack Nicholson. Based on the 1977 novel. Stephen King was famously dissatisfied with Stanley Kubrick's movie adaptation. Eventually, the story was readapted for a 1997 miniseries that followed the book more closely. This is the second highest rated on Letterboxd and second most total votes, but it's the highest rated ranking on many of the ranked lists across the internet. And before we get to number 1, Please subscribe for more videos like this or leave a comment if I missed something important. Number 1. The Shawshank Redemption. Convicted of murder, a banker spends years in prison where he forms friendships and experiences the brutality of prison life. Starring Tim Robbins and Morgan Freeman. Based on the 1982 novella Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption. Stephen King sold the rights for only $5,000 out of friendship to director Frank Darabont, who also directed The Green Mile and The Mist. He never cashed the check, and several years after the movie came out, King got the check framed and mailed it to Darabont with a note, "In case you ever need bail money, love, Steve." This is the highest rated on IMDb, Tomato Audiences, Letterboxd, TMDb, and Just Watch. It's also the second highest rated on Metacritic and Average List rankings. Thanks for watching. Streaming services change often. Check justwatch.com to find out where any movie is currently streaming.